Is the streaming on?
Matt will confirm shortly, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The stream is now live. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon. May I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please raise their hand in person if sat in the chamber, or use the remote raise hand function. After invited to address by the chair, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is on to ensure that they can be seen and heard when actively participating. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. So please could I welcome all committee and non-committee elected members, cabinet members, our officers, and also anyone watching the live meeting, which is at the present being broadcast. Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to Healthy Living and Social Care Scrutiny Committee, Tuesday, the 4th of February 2025 at 5 p.m, which takes us to part 1, agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. I don't have any. Do you have any, Amy?
Yes, Chair. Apologies received from Councillor Cowp.
Thank you. Agenda item 2 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of January 2025. Would anybody like me to go through it page by page, or can it be moved?
Can I move the minutes en bloc, please?
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair, and I will second that. Going to agenda item 3 is to receive declarations of interest and the nature of such interests, including whipping declarations under the Council's Code of Conduct. Do we have any? I see no raised hands, so I'll take that as an assurance that there isn't any, which takes us straight on to agenda item 4, which is the report of the Chief Executive, age-friendly Vale update. And this is being presented to us by Lloyd Fisher and Helen Moses. Are they with us?
Thank you,
Helen,
Chair.
thank you.
Thank you. So members have with them this evening a copy of the age-friendly report, and attached to that is the revised action plan post-consultation. Committee will recall that we attended a meeting of the committee in the summer to update them on the age-friendly work during the consultation period on the draft plan, and we were asked to come back just to update on the work. As set out within the report, this is a public service board project. It's one of the priority areas within the PSB wellbeing plan, and it sort of reflects the status that we've had now awarded to us since 2023 in terms of age-friendly status, which acknowledges the intention to work towards being more age-friendly across the Vale. And as I say, very much involving different partners. And as members will see within the report, the work is being led through the PSB and through an established age-friendly network, but also with the support of the 50+ Forum. So this report sets out the work that's been undertaken to consult on the draft plan, which is for 25 to 28, and that was signed off by the PSB in December at the end of last year. And work is happening now towards the launch of that plan and publicity around the work that will be taken forward by partners in order to promote the work that will happen and continue to engage in those conversations about what an age-friendly Vale means, and to ensure that we're working with the community in terms of developing that work. So within the report, we just provide a bit of context in terms of the Public Services Board itself. For those who might be less familiar with the board, it's primarily scrutinised through the Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee, but different topic areas are brought to relevant scrutiny committees. So for yourselves, we bring the age-friendly report. The work sort of fits within the objectives of the PSB, which is about being more resilient and greener, active and healthier, and more equitable and connected. And members will see that within the detail of the age-friendly action plan, that the activities being taken forward are consistent with those wider objectives within the PSB wellbeing plan. And as set out within 1.4 of this report, it's highlighted that becoming an age-friendly Vale is one of the 3 priority areas that the work of the PSB is focusing on. So in terms of being an age-friendly Vale, we've set out in the report how this links through the work of the wellbeing assessment and acknowledging that we have an ageing population in the Vale, and very much within all partners, the need to ensure that we're meeting the needs and the aspirations of the community in terms of those who are already part of the older community, but also all of us that will be part of that. And that's whether people are working or living within the Vale. When we came to committee last, we highlighted the work within the age-friendly charter that we'd developed through the network that set out what we were looking to do as linked to the commitments and the domains within the World Health Organization's age-friendly status. So as requested when we came to the committee in the summer, within this report, we've set out some of the information about the consultation that was undertaken in the summer. We were out and about at a number of different events. The survey and consultation was promoted online and through leaflets to ensure that people had the opportunity to comment on the draft action plan and feed into the work. It was also a chance to raise the profile of the age-friendly activities itself. So we had 135 surveys that were completed through that exercise, and overall we had a really positive response to the commitments that were being set out within the plan. So we have revised the plan slightly, but it very much reflects what people have been telling us and what we presented to the committee in the summer. There were 3 priority areas that came through quite strongly in the consultation, and as set out in point 2.7, that people have a sense of purpose, feel respected and are actively engaged in their communities, that people are well informed about the support and the opportunities available through different types of communications, and that people have access to suitable forms of transport. And these are areas that will be taken forward by all the PSB partners. So some of these will be through collective action, but some of them are actually how we respond as different organisations ourselves. And this is very much consistent with what's being developed as part of the council's draft corporate plan as well, in terms of the commitments within there. So that's the sort of the detail of the consultation that was undertaken, just to provide members with an update on the work that was undertaken, the levels of response and how that has shaped the work. We're, as I say, we're looking now to launch the work itself now in the next month or so. But in addition to the work that's been happened to develop the age-friendly action plan, we've continued to undertake work, and just within the report we set out in 2.12 that we continue to work with the 50 Plus Strategy Forum. The membership there is growing, and there's been a series of meetings and events that provide social opportunities, but also there's a lot of work that's happening through subgroups of the forum and that the team are supporting. We are also working very much in terms of promoting pension credit and entitlement. So again, different parts of the council are coming together and through different events to make sure that that information is getting out to people. So you'll see that there was work done to sort of promote information to council housing tenants, and also a series of work that was happening as part of the Age Friendly Vale Positive Ageing campaign as well. And just really to highlight that the work that has been taken forward to develop the action plan that will taken forward as part of its implementation is very much an exercise involving different partners, but also many different parts of the council. So it includes work that's taken as part of the Golden Pass scheme run through the Leisure Service, the promotion of Dewis Cymru, Green Links. So all of that together is contributing to ensure that we do have a more age-friendly veil. So we've attached to this report the updated action plan itself, and within that there are the key points across the different actions that will be taken, and particularly highlighting those areas that I mentioned around engagement and communications within that. So that was really just to bring the committee up to speed in terms of the work that has been undertaken since we came in the summer to talk about the consultation, and that the work is ongoing. We are funding the work through some grant funding from Welsh Government in terms of that being able to fund a coordinator for this work, and we've got another year of funding for that as well. So that will really assist in terms of now that implementation and taking forward the new action plan and strategy across partners and engaging with the community. So if there's any questions, thank you, with regards to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Do we have any questions? Yes, can I bring in Councillor Neil Thomas first, please?
Actually, I'm quite happy to step back and let Councillor Cave and Councillor Lloyd Selby go before me.
Thank you, Neil. Councillor Christine Cave. Councillor Cave.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. I have a few questions. First of all, I think some of the things that the consultation brought forward are no surprise to any of us here. And I guess they're not much of a surprise to you either. So I guess my first question has to be, was there anything that you didn't expect from the consultation that came out of it? You said you've tweaked some things slightly. I think that was your term. The other thing I'm interested to know is some figures, really. You said 135 people completed the consultation, and I wonder what percentage of our ageing population that figure actually is, because that gives some meaning then to the consultation. I particularly want to champion the rural veil, which is obviously no surprise to anyone. What came out was, as you said yourself, about the Green Link service in the rural vale. And if we are to overcome loneliness and be age friendly, one of the things we have to do is make sure our Green Link service in the rural vale, where there is no other way of getting out and about, that is actually fit for purpose. So I am a little bit surprised that in the past we haven't recognised, or some people in the council haven't recognised the importance of the service, and that's why it was without an officer for 3 years. And also it wasn't very age friendly up until quite recently, because it was sending out really large bills to people because it had no ability to take cash. And some people actually received annual bills. And as a person on a pension, I guess you've got some understanding of how unfriendly that would have been. And that, is within the hands of the Vale of Glamorgan Council to have a direct impact on the Green Link service in a positive way. So there's a couple of questions there really about the Green Link service. How are you as the coordinator or the person driving this strategy forward, how are you going to keep a very close eye and monitor the Green Link service? And some figures, please, around what the 135 response rate actually means, and also how out of these 135 responses, what did you learn that was new?
Thank you, Christine. Helen, can you answer that question for us? Questions?
Yeah, so I think in terms of what we learned through the exercise, I think we were pleased with the support that there was for the development of the work around the age-friendly veil, both from our partners that we'd be working with and the community. And in terms of consolidating that into an approach, as I think in terms of those issues around communication, greater engagement and transport, I don't think there were any surprises for us there. And a number of the responses that we received really reflected what we'd also learned through the Let's Talk exercise that we'd run recently as well, in terms of concerns around access to health services as well. And again, as I say, this is very much a partnership approach. So I think, as I say, what what we have done is try to tweak the work, developed an executive summary of the action plan, and we're conscious that some people want more bite-sized information and some people are more interested in some of the details. So we're kind of very conscious of how we take that forward. I think there are lessons that we're learning around how we can improve some of that engagement and reach to our communities, and actually how we can best use the resource that we have to go out to the community. So some of the work that we do with some of the local community councils in terms of attending some of their events and some partnership events is something that we'd look to explore more in order to address some of the issues that have raised. As I said, we have got an ageing population, so 135 responses, as you say, is a small number in terms of the overarching number of people within the Vale. I can't give you the percentage off the top of my head of what that relates to. But as I say, we have also looked at that in consideration with the other consultation exercise that might be undertaken to build up that picture of the Vale. And I think very much the age-friendly work is about continuing those conversations and refining the work that we'll do and challenging ourselves and our partners about how we make those improvements. I think, again, the concerns around transport is something that we would have expected, because we're very conscious through our work with the 50 Plus Forum that is often an issue that is raised. And again, particularly what the opportunities might be around the Green Links service and how we do meet those different needs and work with different partners. So we're very much at the beginning of trying to take forward this work. But I think what this has helped us by bringing partners together with the plan and undertaking that work is to consolidate this, but actually see how it also reflects some of our other work as well. So it's kind of continuing those conversations, continuing to develop that age-friendly network and build on a lot of the work and things that we already have in place, but where we need to make those enhancements. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to come back, Christine?
Yes, I just like to say, is it possible to get us, as a committee, some sort of information on the percentage? And I think my question was, how do you intend to monitor the Green Link service going forward? So a little bit more information on that might be useful.
We'll work with the team that obviously are responsible for the Green Links to see what opportunities there are in order to respond to the issues that have come through with this, and then obviously to look to see what the improved outcomes can be with that. So that will be an ongoing piece of work for us, and we can come back to committee in future as part of the progress reporting against the plan to update on that. And certainly we can come back to you with more details on some of those figures as well.
Yeah, that would be very useful if we can be sent that, because as far as Green Links is concerned, I think this has been going on for quite a long time now. It's a long ongoing problem. So would it be possible, as Councillor Cave has asked for us to get that information?
Obviously, I can't speak on behalf of the Green Links team, but we'll go back to them as part of the age-friendly work and raise those issues again, and look to see what can be brought back to the committee as well. So we will feed back on that, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Susan Lloyd-Selby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to say that, sorry, this isn't my question, but just to clarify that the Environment and Regeneration Committee leads on transport, and that includes having updates on what's happening with the Green Link service. So that's the usual reporting mechanism. It's part of the Environment and Regeneration Committee's forward work plan. We recently had an update on Green Links, and as I say, that does fall within our regular schedule. So just in terms of coordinating information to scrutiny committees, it's worth considering that, so that we're sure that that debate is happening in the right place. Helen, thank you for the report. My question is what are the next steps in terms of the issues that have been brought forward and the concerns that have been raised? Where do they go and how will they be addressed? Thanks.
Thank you, Helen.
So the age-friendly work comes under the auspices of the Public Services Board. We've got an age-friendly network that sits under that, which involves representatives from all the partners within the PSB and wider as well, and some community representation. So what we will be doing now is working through those partners. As you'll see within the plan, there's a range of actions which will mean slightly different things for different organisations in terms of that engagement, in terms of that communications. So we'll be working now through them to develop more detail in terms of that and that report progress to the Public Services Board. And so we have got funding now to continue the posts that we have within the team to oversee that work and bring that together. So it is very much about bringing those partners now together to respond to that consultation and take these forward now into those tangible actions now that we've got that framework and that commitment that's been signed off by the PSB at the end of last year.
Thank you, Helen. Councillor Neil Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Helen. My question is sort of more in the demographic area as well. Looking at point 1.7 under age-friendly Vale, where we're talking about the projected 25% increase, roughly just below 25% increase in the population of people aged over 65. Well, there's been a considerable contraction, 17.7 according to the figures here, in people younger than that, particularly in the 0 to 15 group, I think. I mean, it indicates that the Vale is a great place for people to come to retire. We're getting a lot of people moving in retiring from other areas, but the growth is significantly higher than that in other parts of Wales. And I mean, that is concerning. It has huge implications for our budgetary concerns, as well as health concerns as well, because as I know well, older people tend to start to suffer more and more with ill health, and that puts pressure on both frontline and secondary health services. So could you give us your observations on that and what we're doing to try and bring this to the awareness of the Senedd Welsh Gov in looking at the kind of balance in budgetary share down that we're going to be talking about shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Helen, are you able to answer?
Probably some elements of that. So I think, yes, we're very conscious, I think, as you say, in terms of that ageing population. So both in terms of what that means in terms of the aspirations of that community and meeting their different needs and the pressures that that may place on services. So I think in terms of taking this work forward, there's very much about ensuring that the community feel engaged and supported, but also being aware of, say, in terms of what that might mean and how we plan our services, the benefits of some of the preventative action that we may be looking to put in place to ensure that if we're living longer, that we're living healthier for longer as well. So again, so that can both sort of for the demands on services, but also thinking about sort of people's mental and physical well-being. So I think there's a number of things there that we are taking into account as we're sort of planning for the future. And I think, again, this was very much why the Public Services Board was keen to see this as a priority within the wellbeing plan, as it was something that was specific for the Vale, that was a challenge for service providers. And obviously there's implications in terms of that demand for services and how we take that forward moving forward. In terms of the different conversations that would be happening around that budgetary level, that's something that I wouldn't necessarily be part of, so I'm not able to comment on that. But I can certainly take that back and we can feed something back more to the committee around that framework as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Gemma online, and I think that she'll have heard what I've said.
Yeah.
she's there.
Yeah, I think, Lloyd, did you want to say something first?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to update members that Welsh Government are currently working on the local authority population projections for 2023. We should have those hopefully in the summer of this year. So the data in this report is based on 2019 population projections. They're a bit older than we'd like to have included in the report, but they're the most up-to-date available at the moment. So when we get those 2023 population projections, we'll have a better idea of sort of the population changes that have happened in the last few years and more up-to-date figures from Census 21 that are fed into those population projections. So they may give us a better idea of what that ageing population may look like in the Vale of Glamorgan. And as Helen, to echo what Helen said, we often provide evidence reports through the Vale Public Services Board, so all partners are aware of that data, and we continue to raise that sort of information when it becomes available to partners to ensure that it remains on the agenda for the PSB and is taken forward through this work. So hopefully I can also circulate afterwards if it would be useful with the report that we use to update those figures for mid-year estimates, they're called, based on the 2021 census.
Thank you, Lloyd. Yes, I'm sure people would appreciate having a look at that. Gemma, did you want to come in?
Very briefly, Chair, because I'll be picking some of this up as part of the budget report, but certainly the way Welsh Government allocates its funding in respect of older people in the settlement was a key line of our response on the budget consultation to Welsh Government. And obviously where there are issues in the Welsh Government formula, whilst accepting that it is a crude method of allocation and therefore will never be perfect. I suppose that where there are issues in that funding mechanism, where we have an increasing number of older people with an increasing amount of complexity, there are budgetary issues, and I suppose where there's a mismatch with the formula and maybe some issues around things like the introduction of the social care cap and the accompanying funding that went into the formula. Obviously that's exacerbated the more older people a local authority has. So that was a key line of our response to Welsh Government on the budgetary consultation. But I understand it is a theme that they are intending to pick up in future years as part of their rolling review of the funding allocation.
Thank you, Gemma. In light of what has been said today, we have two recommendations. The first one is that we note the report. And the second one was that members consider if they would like to receive further updates on the work of Age Friendly. I would like to make a recommendation, considering that we can, if there's any particular aspect of that report, we can always call that in to the Scrutiny Committee here. So my recommendation, I feel, would be not bringing back this report, as it already goes to CPR and we all receive a copy anyway. So could I ask if anybody would like to second that we do that? Councillor Neil Thomas.
I'm just seconding.
Thank you. Councillor Godfrey. Oh, he was just seconding as well. Thank you. Thank you both. So we do have the recommendation to go back. So thank you very much, Helen and Lloyd, for your attendance on this. And I dare say that we might bring certain aspects of it back to this committee for updates. But at the moment, we don't want you back this year anyway. So thank you very much for that, which takes us on to agenda item 5, which is the initial budget 25-26 and medium-term financial plan 25-26 to 2029-30, and the proposals for consultation, which went to the Cabinet on the 16th of January 2025. This is not happy reading, and I believe that you have some slides for us, Gemma.
Yes, please, Chair, and I'm hoping Matt or Amy would be kind enough to share them for me. Thank you very much. So this is the initial proposals that are currently out for public consultation ahead of the final settlement from Welsh Government. If you go to the next slide, please. And again, please. And again, sorry. So ahead of the final settlement from Welsh Government, and we're working towards setting a final budget on the 10th of March at Council, ahead of the statutory deadline for council tax setting, which is, of course, the 11th of March. So the ask for Scrutiny Committee today is for any views and comments on the overall approach to budget setting, the cost pressures that are outlined specific to this Scrutiny Committee, the savings that are outlined specific to this Scrutiny Committee, and of course any other ideas, any alternative ideas that committee would like us to consider or explore. So in terms of the background to how we have got to where we are, as you'll be aware, we brought the medium-term financial plan refresh back in November 2024, and that set out 34 million underlying cost pressures and a gap of 14.7 million at the time. We did have the Welsh Government settlement just before Christmas, and that made a number of allocations in year for pay and teachers' pensions, and there was a 4.3% average settlement across Wales for 25-26. Go on to the next slide, please. So the Vale received slightly less as part of that provisional settlement at 3.3%, but that was certainly more than we had reflected in those initial proposals. The transfers in for the Vale equated to 6.5 million, and that was really good news, and it enabled the council to particularly correct the base position for pay and pensions, particularly in respect of schools. And there was some headroom to meet other cost pressures as well. In terms of the some of the detail of that settlement, we saw significant increases across the SSAs for schools at 10%, social services are just short of 12%, and fire at just over 12%. But there was very little increase across some of the other service areas. And if we go on to the next slide, please. So this slide just sets out, I suppose, some of the, it is slightly out of date, so apologies, but some of the poor economic performance that we have seen, and I suppose some of that economic performance is linked to our prospects for funding as public sector, and I suppose why some of those expectations of increased funding across the medium term financial plan are quite limited. In the context of that, obviously, it's really important that we reshape the council's budget as much as possible to reflect that likely funding and meet that target operating model that we'd be working towards for 2030. If you go on to the next slide, please. So in terms of the initial proposals that you have before you, it sets out an overall budget gap of just over 8 million and models council tax at 6.9%. There is also some additional council tax income reflected around tax base growth, some provision for council tax arrears, and a review a single person discount to try and really maximise those council tax returns and efficiency. Within the figures, you'll see pressures of 29 million across the whole council, but there is underlying pressure of 40 million, so an 11 million differential. Of that 29 million, around 19 million relates to pay and non-pay inflation, so inflationary pressures are still significant within the council's budget pressures, and around 90 million of pay and non-pay inflation, and just short of 40 million of those pay pressures, even have been allocated to social services in this initial budget. In terms of how that budget gap would be closed, if you go on to the next slide, please. We're proposing £9 million of savings, offset by some reversal of savings. And that's where we made temporary savings that have been aligned to things like investment income and internal borrowing, which obviously need to be built out slightly as we're projecting reserves to drop over future years. If we could go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this sets out some of the cost pressures for service areas, and I'm hoping Lance and his team, if they don't mind coming in to be able to give you some of the detail on the cost pressures for the service.
Am I able to talk?
Yeah, we can hear you, Lance. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't tell. Sorry, I didn't know whether it needs to go via the chair. Yes, certainly. I think these cost pressures are significant, and you'll see the first section relate to children's services, and this is about ensuring that we have sufficient capacity in our intake and assessment team, and so we need that additional practitioner manager. We also, and this will be replicated in the adult section, our providers are expecting a fee increase as they get every year. A lot of those costs are associated with higher costs for them in terms of staff pay and so on, but also goods and services, such as electricity, gas, and so on. This next one, in terms of external placements, tries to take into account some of the pressure that you have seen probably in previous reports relating to our overspend position and the fact that we have more children requiring placement at the moment. And as I just said, based on significant increased cost. And I'm sorry, I can't read it anymore. It seems to have gone fuzzy. But I think that's the same one anyway. Can you move on to the next one? Is my screen frozen?
Sorry, are we able to go to the next slide, please? Lance, can you see the screen okay still? Do you want me to?
Yeah, it's cleared up now. So
okay. Are we able to unshare and reshare potentially? Because I think it might have frozen on screen.
I think it has
okay,
moved.
I think it's moved on now.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay, and so this is now adult services. Again, as I said earlier, this first section is around provider fees, and very similar to children's, but obviously that covers the significant amount of our budget that goes currently to domiciliary care providers and care home providers and supported accommodation and so on. The next one, in terms of the base budget, recognises the level to which adult services is currently overspending in those areas. So it's an attempt to reconcile previous year's budget. There's also something here in adult services in relation to national insurance costs. So I'm sure you'll be aware of that. And the last one is recognition of the continued growth in terms of numbers of older people primarily, but this does apply to anybody who needs care. So I don't know if we can move on to the next one. Oh, now on to savings. Shall I go back to you, Gemma?
Yes, please, Lance. And just to add, apologies, there should be a slide for care homes, and I think that's been missed off, but there is £100,000 allocated to the council-run residential homes as part of the initial proposals as well, which recognises some of those costs around running care homes, because obviously care homes are really exposed to some of those inflationary pressures that we've seen in recent years. So in terms of the savings position, there's been £9 million of savings proposed as part of these initial budget proposals, and there was a real hope that there would be we'd maximise the reshaping element of those proposals, because I think whilst there were some reshaping proposals last year, they were relatively limited, and of course we know that there are significant issues around some of those tactical savings in terms of that our ability to continue to salami slice the budget. So there was real hope there, and across the council we're being able to achieve or propose certainly £4 million of reshaping savings. There is, of course, 1.2 million of schools efficiency savings that have been put forward as well. And then the remainder of 3.7 million of those more tactical traditional type savings. Within social services as well, around just short of 2 million of the savings that have been put forward. So there's 3.6 million pounds of savings that have been put forward by the service. Just short of 2 million of that have been classified as reshaping. So attempting to transform the service, largely around service transformation. There is some target operating model in respect of income savings as well, but moving towards the type of council again that we would need to be by 2030. If you could go on to the next slide, please. So this goes through some of the savings that have been put forward. And again, Lance, I'm really sorry, but I was hoping you'd be able to come through and run through some of those savings for members, please.
Oh, can I just check people can hear me? Is that okay?
It's fine. Yes,
Yeah,
we can.
okay, lovely. So there's quite a long list of savings, and you'll see some of them are small and some of them are fairly significant in size. I anticipate this may be an area that you'll want to ask questions, but I will attempt to rattle through them. The first one, committee very much aware of telecare. We're reviewing the fees and hoping that we can get more people into that and make it more cost effective as a result. Adult transport review, some of these haven't been completed yet, but we're looking to ensure that we're not paying for transport twice or paying where an individual has the funds to pay for themselves. Releasing time to care is predominantly where we have individuals who are having double-handed calls at the moment, and seeing whether through the use of equipment and through training whether it's possible to reduce those calls to single-handed calls. And complex cases review is where we believe a case is so complex that it should be being funded by the NHS and be covered by continuing healthcare. Agency review is where we have any agency staff, and we are looking to essentially replace those staff with permanent staff or temporary staff that aren't funded through an agency and so are cheaper. The next one is a fairly significant transformational project in terms of reablement, and something that we've aspired to do for a long time is to try and make our domiciliary care available following a period of reablement for everybody. At the moment, we tend to focus on those with the most reablement potential, and we think by doing that we can potentially ensure that we've got packages of the right size from the outset, and so that we're anticipating there'll be a savings result of us not over providing. The next one relates to additional income. This is measured really on how we're doing at the moment, and it's an adjustment figure that really bears in mind the number of people that we have on our books who are assessed as being able to pay for their own care, but perhaps their care is their finances are held up in their property. So we pay in the meantime, and we expect at the point that property is sold that we will have those funds. So that's based on our current trajectory. So I don't know whether we can move on to the next one. Okay, and sorry, it's taking my screen a little while to update here. Debt recovery relates to we obviously have to charge for social care services. There are some arrangements where people haven't been paying as they should have been, and we're getting much smarter at that process, and we're anticipating that we'll be able to achieve that. Again, that's building on current work. Similarly, direct payment processes, that's about improving how we process those funds currently and ensure that people don't accumulate large amounts of funding. Increasing income is broad and wide ranging, and that will involve some changes to the pricing structure. For what I should say for our residents is that the domiciliary care, the non-residential charging cap would apply. So in many cases, individuals would not be affected, but other organisations who commission our services may be. We are also looking at reviewing some of our budget lines and have a vacant post that we will remove. We're in advance of the advocacy contract. We're fairly confident that will be cheaper than it is currently. And the last one, the non-residential maximum charge uplift, is the figure that Welsh Government have given us in relation to the fact that charge has not been increased. So they've given us some grant money for that. So I wonder if we could move on to the next one. And so these are a complicated set of savings, and I could probably deal with a number of them at the same time. So I think I would probably look at eliminate unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and residential accommodation for children together. This is very much about us providing our own or through the third sector provision, much more locally, with a view to saving costs on more expensive provision further away. So that probably is a summary of those three, but we're recognising they're coming from different lines. The pre-birth pathway relates to an anticipated saving with regard to increased work and arrangements at trying to support families to stay together, particularly when the mum is pregnant. So we'll be doing some work with her at that point, particularly with those cases where we may have otherwise been thinking that we may have had to remove the child at birth. So again, I suppose that's predicated on us putting more work and effort in at that point, with a view to preventing high costs further down the line. Regional projects review, this is where we're working primarily with Cardiff on a number of different projects we have in place jointly with them. Again, we think we can probably do a number of those more effectively locally, as do Cardiff. And so we're looking at how we disentangle some of those arrangements and provide things more locally, and again, expecting a saving. Children's transport review, similar to the adults one, making sure again that we're not providing unnecessary transport. Agency review, you'll be aware that we have had high numbers of social workers agency social workers in children's services. This is steadily coming down, and we are replacing those posts with permanent posts, or attracting those agency staff into working in the Vale. This saving is anticipating continued amounts of that. Staffing review is similar to the one that I described earlier, so that's taking advantage of potential posts that we wouldn't recruit to. The independent fostering agency placements for children is endeavouring to use our own fostering in preference to those higher cost independent fostering agency provision. And finally, the Regional Integration Fund efficiency is where we think we can use the existing funding that we have from that source to have a bigger impact in the Vale of Glamorgan and therefore on our associated costs. So I think that's probably it for me.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Lance.
Yeah.
Very briefly now, I'm very much almost there in terms of slides. So if we go on to the next slide, please. So just in terms of the overall position across directorates, you'll see we're looking at proposing a budget of about 331.5 million for 25-26. And the gap between the budget and the Welsh Government calculated SSA will increase. So the SSA is around 335 million for 25-26, and social services is showing an increase of just short of 11% as part of those proposals, reflecting both the £14 million cost pressures and the £3.6 million savings. If we could go to the next, skip over the next slide, please, and just go to the response to the government consultation. So as referenced previously, the council has responded on the government consultation on the budget. So just highlighting some of the shortfall against the pressures that councils across Wales are reporting, and the impact of national insurance on local authorities and social care providers. Councils have obviously received a significant disparity in terms of funding. So there was a request for a floor as part of that response. And also the response highlighted some of the issues around formulas for social care, particularly in respect of some of the data used for adults, but also some of the needs for children's social care, and also the funding formula that's used for schools. So the next two slides very much highlight the kind of ask to scrutiny, which I picked up at the start, and also in terms of the next steps, which again I highlighted at the start of the item. So those are the main bits I was going to run through, but happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you both very much. It was a very good consultation from you both, and really appreciate all the detail that you've gone into. Does anybody have any questions? I can't see anybody's hand up. This report is just for noting. I mean, you did home in on the cost pressures and the increase in provider costs and the more intake of children, etc. Which, for me, as we are the second lowest funding council per head, it begs the question, why is this? And I don't expect an answer, but I just felt it had to be said. So if there are no more questions, or there aren't any questions at all, I'd like to move on to agenda item 6, please. Agenda item 6 is the draft capital programme proposals 25-26 to 2029-30. Went to Cabinet on the 18th of January 2025. Gemma?
Thank you very much, Chair. And I do have some slides, if we could share, please. Thank you, Amy. Far fewer slides on capital, though, so I'll just run through them now. If you go on to the next slide, please. So the report setting out the proposed draft capital proposals for the period 25-26 to 29-30. So we received, as you'll be aware, our provisional settlement in December, and it was quite good news. So we had more funding than we had expected. So the amount awarded to the council was 7.6 million, and that funding is made up of 4.2 million grants, general capital funding grant, and 3.4 million of supported borrowing. So Welsh Government give us the revenue to enable us to go out and borrow to finance that capital expenditure. So an increase of 620,000. We don't know what we're going to receive in future years. So at the moment, we have flatlined based on the 7.6 million that we are expecting to achieve in 25-26. If we go on to the next slide, please. So the capital programme that's been put together is still relatively ambitious. The slide provides a summary, and in 25-26, the council have a proposed capital programme of 82.4 million and just short of 400 million over the 5-year period. And that includes 16 million for sustainable communities for learning and 86 million for education pipeline schemes and 229 million for housing improvement programmes. So those are obviously the significant sources of funding within the programme. If you go on to slide 3, please. So this slide just details the sources of funding that will be used to fund the programme. There's quite significant unsupported borrowing, but the vast majority of that will relate to either Sustainable Communities for Learning scheme or the Housing Improvement Programme. So 171 million of that relates to the Housing Improvement Programme. The overall programme, though, is heavily funded through specific grants. If we go on to the next slide. So in terms of the capital bid process this year, capital bids were shortlisted by the Strategic Insight Board in October, and a summary of the shortlisted capital bids by directorate are detailed in the report. Total gross capital bids over the 5-year period totalled 15.4 million, but after we deducted any potential grant or Section 106, they totalled 7.1 million. We did have obviously some significant limitations around funding, and obviously capital bids are considerably more expensive than they were 5 years ago, but there is some significant risk associated with some of those schemes that have been submitted. So only those schemes of the highest corporate priority and all risk could be pursued, and the recommendations of the Strategic Insight Board were then reviewed by the senior leadership team before being put forward. So the new schemes that have been included as a result of this process that are relevant to this scrutiny committee include some toilet works at Cartreth, Porthcurry and Southway, and those are making those toilets more accessible, which has been a significant issue in those residential homes. There are also some access improvements at Southway that have been included in the programme. There's the inclusion of the scheme for T-Genera source heat pump, which would be really positive because that would be a key hub for the social services team going forward. And there's also a proposal to do a rolling programme of works over, I think it's 3 or 4 years at T Robin, which is used in conjunction with Action for Children for provision of services. If we go on to the next slide, so this just sets out the next steps. So we're asking Scrutiny to consider these capital programme and make any comments that can be referred back to Cabinet. We'll be asking managers to revise and revisit the recommended schemes, also looking at the current capital programme to ensure that that programme is deliverable. We'll also be using the response from the public consultation to feed into the final proposals. These proposals then need to feed into a draft Treasury Management Strategy that will be reported to Governance and Audit Committee on the 17th of February. And once we've received the final settlement, that will then be reported to Cabinet and then on to Council on the 10th of March. Those are the main points on the capital proposals, but happy to take any questions on the
You're muted, Chair.
Thank you. I can't see any hands up, so I presume that nobody has any questions. And does anybody have any recommendations?
Yeah, it's not so much. Yeah, it's not so much a question. I see Susan's come up. I wanted to thank Gemma for both reports. Actually, I mean, it does highlight, particularly for this committee, the fact that most of our services are statutory and therefore the cost pressures are something we've got to eat, which does have major impact on the rest of the council's budget, which aren't statutory, which are more the nice things that we like to do effectively as a council to keep supporting the population. But these are statutory increases that we have, or statutory services that we do have to face the increase on, and it's a tightrope for Gemma and her team to have to walk. And I'd like to congratulate her on actually a very good report. Thank you very much. I see there's a couple of hands up now, though.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you for that. And Councillor Lloyd Selby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with the previous comments. Thank you, Gemma, for the reports, but also thank you to Lance and the team for the work that they're doing. It's good to see that despite the significant pressures, we are still investing in capital projects in this vital area. And, you know, I know we've moved on from the previous report on the initial budget, but I do think it's also important that we recognise the steps that are being taken, despite the fact that we have a statutory duty to provide for our citizens, that steps are being taken to ensure that there's effective budget management in this area, but also that, as we should, we are continuing to prioritise the needs of our most vulnerable residents. So I echo the comments of the previous councillor. The fact that we've not had significant questions in this scrutiny committee, you know, this is our opportunity, this is our chance to raise any concerns and ask any questions. And I think the fact that there hasn't been any is an acknowledgement that we recognise the pressures, and also we support and endorse the work that's being done to meet the need despite those pressures. So thanks to all involved, and I would suggest that that's fed back from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. I don't have to do any summing up myself now. Councillor Julie Lynch-Wilson, please.
Hi, sorry, came on and off again. I just like to just agree with my fellow councillors. I mean, the reports have been fantastic. I am in the learning and culture and this scrutiny, which I think takes the massive amount of our budgets. I work in the private sector care home, and it's like the fourth bridge. You're constantly, the maintenance that's involved. The three biggest things are staff, food and energy, and all of that, as we know, have gone through the roof. So my hat is off to anybody who has to do anything with budgets or maintenance, because so they just I said, it's like the fourth bridge, it just carries on. So I'd just like to thank everybody for all their hard work, and continue.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, I don't think there's anybody here that doesn't appreciate or acknowledge how hard this particular department really works to keep things going as well as they can and as well as they have. So please take our gratitude and thanks back to the department, as always. And thank you for such a concise reporting on this report. I'm sure it does help, especially the new councillors, to know exactly what is going on in that department. So once more, thank you very much. Which takes us on to agenda item 7, which is any urgent items that I may have, and you'd be glad to know that I haven't. And moving on to part 2, which is exactly the same. I don't have any items that are urgent. Amy, did you want to come in?
If I may, Chair, just to very quickly say, just for the sake of the minutes, are the committee happy to note the capital report? And may I have a seconder for both reports, please?
Thank you, Russell.
Happy to note, and we're all seconding.
Yeah, and I did say that it was just for noting, and nobody came back. Well, that actually concludes the business this evening. So all I'm left to do is to remind everyone that our next meeting is scheduled for what date, Amy?
That would be the 4th of March, Chair.
4th of March. Thank you. So don't forget, if you have any particular items that you wish to bring to this scrutiny, please get in touch with me or Amy. And thank you all very much for your attendance, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you. Good night.
Night all.
Thank you. Good night.